Round 7 of the Norm Congress here in St. Louis. Our top Norm section saw both leading ladies lose their games. Grandmaster Vorontsov cornered Solikidu with a mate in one, and Adi Patel showed how his bishop and knight outmaneuvered Abrahamian's rook. Vorontsov and Patel have first place, but only slightly. In the International Master Norm event, Matsenko is wrapping the field up, going +4 so far, and beating International Master Torres in last night's final evening round. Norms are still within reach, but only for those who win the rest of their games. Round 8 coverage starts now. Players all over the world have struggled to earn the Grandmaster title. Which players will earn a Norm? Which players will go home with the prize? Welcome to the 2018 St. Louis Norm Congress. Hello, chess fans, and welcome back to St. Louis for the penultimate round of the 2018 Norm Congress. I'm Ben Simon, and joined as always by Grandmaster Josh Friedel. We have games in progress here in round 8, but real quick, let's not waste any time. Take a look at the results of what happened last night in the tournament's final evening round.
Indeed, lots of bloody games, as we can see. John Bartholomew knocked out Akshat Chandra, Pavlo Vorontsov and Adi Patel knocked out the two leaders, as we saw in the preview. And Mark Paragua just completely destroyed Hamurkulov. So the tournament results got completely knocked around. However, I would say it maximized everyone's chances for Norms going into the day.
There are still plenty of those, and we'll talk about that in a moment. As far as the other side of the room last night, round 7 of the International Master Norm field.
These guys don't back down. That's all I have to say. Yeah, just a lot of crazy games. Again, a lot of the games really could have been gone either way, but in the end we saw Matsenko securing his lead with a win over Torres. Torres, that was actually his third loss in a row. We call it long castling. Just, but it's never a fun thing, so he's got to bounce back. But Matsenko is finally showing, look guys, I'm way higher than the rest of you. I'm the better player. However, it has not been smooth sailing, and anything can happen, as we know. But for now, he does have the 1.5 lead.
And now, with just 2 rounds remaining, and really just 1.5 if you think about it, let's take a look at the standings. We can really start to break this down and look at our true contenders. The Norm standings after 7 rounds.
Yeah. And as you can see, Vorontsov and Patel, by beating Solikidu and Abrahamian, took that lead. But both Tatev and Stavrula are in the chasing pack of 4s, along with Paragua and John Bartholomew.
And Patel and Tatev and Stavrula, they can all still Norm in this field. They just have to win their last 2 rounds. Okay, and as far as the International Master Norm field, after 7, okay, it's not so close at the top anymore, Josh.
No, it certainly isn't. You have Matsenko leading with 5.5. Now, in a normal tournament, you'd say, okay, his odds of not winning the event are really tiny. He has an advantage this game. I think it's likely he'll secure his first place. However, the great thing about a Norm event, you have all these players still playing for something big. And to be honest, for most players, the Norm is more important even than scoring first in the tournament. So you see all those people with 4, if any of them win 2 of their games, they get an International Master Norm. Obviously, doesn't mean so much for Joel Benau, who already has the title, but for Grabinsky, Stearman, Turgut, and Kolas, they can secure that Norm with 2 wins in the final rounds.
Couldn't have said it better. Now, the game's in progress right now. Let's take a look at the Grandmaster Norm field in round 8.
Indeed. So you have some major matchups. My game of the day, at least, would be Solikidu against Paragua, but plenty of nice matchups. Daniel Gurevich already defeated Akshat Chandra as black. If you guys remember, Gurevich is having a rough event, but you can never underestimate anyone in this field. And he knocked out Chandra pretty simply, I would say.
All right, and we have a game of the day there for our GM Northfield. Yes, indeed. Solikidu and Mark Paragua.
Indeed. A really exciting game. I think Paragua took the advantage, maybe from Stovrula's hands, because I thought that she actually had a very promising position earlier. But we'll get to that game. I look forward to seeing it.
And then the International Master at Northfield in round 8. What's happening at this moment at uschesschamps.com.
Indeed. So as far as results go, Justin Wang already defeated Joel Banawa. Young Justin getting back into the hunt. Not in norm contention, but can certainly have a good result. That's definitely disappointing for Joel, who can no longer win the tournament, but obviously good results still possible. And I believe the rest of the games are going, except Josh Kolas did defeat Tansel Turgut. So Josh still has norm chances. If he wins his last round, Turgut is out.
Indeed. That was the game we were going to talk about in the International Master Norm section. We still have to look at that. Okay, real quick, the tournament format. 2 10-player round-robin fields, game in 90, with a 30-second increment from move 1. And here's an important addition. Now that we start thinking about it, I've been told by the arbiters there will be no playoffs. So if the players are tied for first at the end, we will just have co-winners.
Indeed. And it seems to lack excitement, but quite honestly, after a tournament like this, 2 games a day, those players are pretty relieved not to have to play some playoffs, I can tell you that.
Yeah, and this tournament is more about the individual, right? Can I achieve the norm? Maybe not being first place is the most important, although...
Exactly, but I can tell you it's still nice to get that first place finish,
is.
especially if you're not one of the norm seekers, but even if you are, if you can get a norm and score that first place, that's a good day.
We've been going at it for 3 hours already, even though this broadcast just started. Let's take a look at the schedule. 11 a.m. was when the game started today for the penultimate round, and tomorrow is our finale. It also starts at 11 a.m. Central Time. We go on the air at 2 p.m. at uschesschamps.com. Okay, so, Josh, let's take a look at some of the games before everything really goes crazy.
Yes, I'm going to quickly take you through the games that are completed. So this game was Akshat Chandra lost against Daniel Gorevich. This was an important moment. He has this, I'd say black has a really nice position. Akshat has this D pawn blockaded, but he plays bishop f1, trying to attack that pawn. And Gorevich says, you know what, I'm going to keep advancing. It's my passed pawn. I want to keep going at it. And Akshat doesn't believe him. He's like, all right, buddy, I'll take that guy. But with this many pins, this many tactics, bishop f5 is in the air, this is very dangerous. So Gorevich did something very clever. He played b5, now threatening to just simply take that c4 pawn. Akshat takes back, rook d5, massive pin on the d file, rook e3, bishop f5. That's just way too many pieces attacking that bishop.
1, 2, 3, 4, yep.
Yeah, 4 pieces. And I think that here it's basically over. I don't know what Akshat missed, but my guess would be that he missed maybe b5. To be honest, though, it looked like a pretty tough position anyway. He takes on f5, and Gorevich just finishes by not taking the queen, which would be a little bit less clear, but taking that rook check. And the idea, of course, is that if queen takes queen, rook takes check, take the bishop, you're up a whole rook for 2 pawns. No chance at this level. So a nice win for Daniel, who's been struggling, but tough loss for Akshat, who I think he actually might be in last place now. But definitely not a good result for him. Otherwise, Josh Kolas, as we mentioned, defeated Tansel Turgut as white. This game was quite a crazy game. I thought that out of the opening, around here, Tansel had an excellent position, and he built up what I thought was a very nice advantage. He just controls all the squares. He has that pass pawn on d4, controls all the dark squares. I thought that Josh was going to be in for long suffering. However, Tansel got a little bit careless. He played this move bishop a3, which looks nice. If you trade off these bishops, these dark squares are just super tasty. But here, Josh found the nice shot, c5. This is why you always have to keep a tactical lookout, look for all your tempo moves, anything that attacks something. Now you have a bishop attacked, you have a knight attack, and a pawn attacked. That's too many pieces. And he tries taking on b2, but after bishop takes a6, hitting the rook, the bishop's hanging, the pawn's hanging, it's just too much. Plays bishop a3, snagged that rook, and from here it was only a matter of time until Josh reeled in the point. He snuck in on the h-file. I thought Tansel was getting a little bit of counterplay here, but quite honestly it's too much. In this position it's already pretty hopeless, but Tansel blunders with this move. Josh wraps up the game nicely. I'm not sure this was necessary, but he plays rook h8, threatening rook 1 to h7 mate. That is a tough threat to stop.
I think it's impossible to stop.
It most certainly is.
Okay, good. I was legitimately trying to figure that out. I wasn't trying to be smart with you, Josh.
Are you sure? I don't know.
I
I sense sarcasm.
No.
I'm joking. Yeah, of course. And the other game was Justin Wang defeated Joe Banawa. He traded to a queen endgame. He did something kind of clever. He surrounded his king with his pawns. That king is unassailable. You get a pass pawn, which is more important almost than having extra pawns in a queen and pawn endgame. Justin says, take all the pawns you want. I'm going to queen my a pawn. And sure enough, maybe Joe could have defended slightly better, but to be honest, this is just hopeless, and he resigned here. The idea is if pawn takes pawn, queen takes pawn, the queen has to stop this a pawn, of course. And now he simply plays back. Note how the queen beautifully guards the king. And you're threatening this. You can't perpetual. You can't stop. So, anyways, so he actually resigned in this position. So, let us see. What game should we start with?
So we have Turgut and Banawa now officially out of the running for first in the I am Norm field.
And also out of the Norm, although Banawa wasn't in the search for a Norm, but Turgut was.
Yes.
Why don't we take a look at this Stavrula against Mark Paragua game? So, we have this position. This was quite a crazy game. Let's take a look at how this occurred. It was an anti-Berlin, took on c6, very typical. So now you almost have an exchange Roy type structure. The idea is that this e-pawn is annoying to defend. You play rook e8, knight d7. Castle's queenside. A lot of people like the castle kingside. You get a more positional game. Stavrula, as we've seen this tournament, an aggressive player. She wants to go for the throat. She's like, rook g1. Not very subtle, Ben. She wants to shove that g-pawn. b5, a5, g4, and here I have no idea what's going on. I'll be perfectly honest with you guys. But she's on the attack here. I thought White's position looked promising just because I wasn't sure these pawns are really going much of anywhere. But this happened. However, somehow she got a little bit stuck. Mark played a3, which is an interesting move, b3, and then queen f6. And as you guys can see, this knight is effectively pinned because you can't allow mate. I thought she might try knight c4 with the idea that if you try to attack this knight e5 and you close down this diagonal. However, it's understandable not to want to play this move e5 because the problem with e5 is that it does break up your pawns. It gives black a few squares like f5 and d5. I don't know. But after bishop c1, also covering the mate, he plays knight f4, and now this queen just has nowhere good to go. And this knight is also attacked, which could be a problem. So she gives up her bishop, but quite honestly, I do not like her position when she gives that bishop up. Even if she ends up a pawn, the two bishops, this king is a little bit weak. I'm just not such a fan. And she actually trades queens here, which you'd think would be a good thing. She does snag that g-pawn. However, these knights, they may defend each other, but knights defending each other are often actually quite vulnerable, because if you attack both of them, neither knight can move. So they're almost paralyzed. They defend each other, they do a good job, but they can never move, and that's usually a bad sign for those knights. I would say that at least from a dynamic point of view, I think that black has lots of possibilities. However, Stavrula is up that one pawn. Maybe it'll come through. She plays h4. I'm guessing trying to play h5 and weaken the king side. He plays rook f4, rook back to g3, keeping an eye on that knight, bishop e6. She grabs another pawn, why not? Doubles rooks, e5. So I don't know, it's one of those positions where it could be really, really dangerous for white, but at the same time, if she can consolidate somehow, if she can trade off one of those bishops, if she can win some material, you never really know. It's still a very dynamic position, very interesting, and I definitely look forward to following this game. So I guess the real question here is, what is Mark going to do? After the obvious capture of the knight, I think Stavrula will take, and then probably take this bishop. Note how knight d4 is often a threat here, so if you recapture, you have to watch out. Maybe you can get away with it anyway. Maybe I would start with rook h3, though, threatening a very subtle mate. I assume she would not want to allow that. And then recaptures. But here she could take on b4. And even though this pawn on a3 is kind of annoying, that's just too many pawns probably. You might take on h4. It's still an unclear situation. But quite honestly, I think that this is not quite what Mark wants. So my guess would be, after e5, he'll try to find another solution. Maybe he'll try bishop c5. The idea, of course, is that now you're still hitting this knight. And maybe white could try d4 here. And I guess the problem is that, you know, what do you do with your bishop? If you allow too much, this knight can also come to g5. Now takes the knight as possible. Rook takes rook, rook takes, pawn takes. But even here, this pawn is still a weakness. The mate threat won't last forever if you play rook h3. Even if I have to play king c1 or rook d1, it still looks like white's doing reasonably. So it could be that Mark actually already is having a few problems here. After bishop c5, d4, maybe he can try moving again, keeping that bishop. But now he's not guarding this pawn anymore. Knight g5 is indeed with tempo on the bishop. It's actually just not so simple. So it could be that already it's not so easy. And in fact, bishop c5 was played. So we'll see what Stravula plays. She could play d4, maybe knight g5. But knight g5, bishop d5, it feels like there are too many knights attacked here. I'm not a huge fan, but you never know. It's all very tactical, so I'd have to sit down myself and calculate 5, 10, 15 minutes to figure everything out. I'm going to let these players do the work.
Right.
I don't have to.
Stavrula, look at the time here. 30 seconds?
30 seconds. If those times are accurate, she has a rough go because, again, I would like to spend 15 minutes, whatever it is. It looks like she did, in fact, play d4. You can see her on the screen. And Mark, I would say, is a little bit quicker, and he also is used to playing more rapidly. So he actually did play bishop back to b6, d4, bishop back to b6. So I expect knight g5 here from her. Not a lot of time, but still should be enough. And again, I think that he may be messed up, because honestly, it looks like she's just taking too much, you know? Say after a move like knight g5, which was in fact played, I suspect bishop d5, maybe bishop d7 is more accurate so the bishop doesn't get attacked, actually. He plays to f5. He doesn't even want to attack that knight. So yeah, this is kind of a tricky move. Again, b4 hangs, but so does d4. So for example, if you play knight takes here, his plan might just be to take on d4 with the bishop. And those bishops are pretty powerful. If he can maintain those pieces, it's pretty good. One of the ideas, for example, is if knight d5, you can play rook takes f2. And the idea is you still can't take this bishop because of the stupid mate with rook f1. Mate is always a problem. So if rook takes rook, bishop takes rook. Again, maybe she can try rook c3, play dynamic. But honestly, with the back rank as weak as it is, I would be kind of nervous here, especially with no time. But keep in mind, if she can get that rook into c7, she might be actually the one playing for mates. So he would actually have to be a little careful, maybe play c5. But this is quite far afield. In the game, she played knight to e7. Rather than take this b-pawn, she tries to go after the bishop. Maybe she wants this little knight fork here. I'm not exactly sure. To be honest, I preferred taking the pawn, at least at a glance, just to eliminate that guy from the board, allow her to free up this king side a little bit. But my guess would be she really wants to take one of those bishops. So this game is quite exciting. She doesn't have much time left. Let's see what he played. He looks like he just played a move. Rook takes h4. Indeed, he takes off the pawn. Keep in mind, rook h1 is a threat. So she's got to deal with that. My guess would be she takes on f5, but I'm not exactly sure. She's got to do it fast, though, otherwise bad things will happen.
Yeah, gosh, this is tough. 30 seconds added per move, but still, that's...
But you got to think sometimes, you know? And it's just, practically speaking, it's such a tough situation to be in. And, again, maybe, you know, she's resourceful. Maybe she'll do something. It looks like she played rook to g1. She did not take this bishop. So she guards against the mate threat. But, again, it's just a tough situation. d4 hangs as well. My guess would be, though, that she has a trick in mind. This is the reason she played knight e7, is let's say if bishop takes d4, she can now play even rook takes d4 as a move. The idea being that after rook takes, knight takes f5 check, forking the king and queen. And after rook takes, guess what? Fork number 2.
Beautiful.
Take the rook. So that's a really nice trick. My guess would be this was her idea when she played it. Keep in mind, even with little time, players this strong see lots of tactics. Don't get me wrong. So it's just because she is low on time does not mean she doesn't have tricks up her sleeve. This is probably why she did not take the b-pawn, which is what I wanted to do. But we'll see. I'm sure Mark's not going to fall for it. The question is, what does he have to do? This bishop actually doesn't have that many squares. However, these knights can be a little bit stranded in some positions. So if he finds a way to put that bishop on a c5 square, she might find that her knights are a little bit awkward. But quite a game. Definitely will try to keep an eye on it.
I mean, it's very important for the standings in this section.
It certainly is. It's not only important for the standings, it's important for norm purposes. Stavroula needs 2 out of 2 to get her norm, and Paragua is tied with her, meaning that he obviously doesn't need a norm, he's already a Grandmaster, but if he gets a win here, he'll have a shot to play for first place. If he loses, almost for sure first place is out of reach.
Now, there are 3 players in both fields at this time who can earn their norm for the Grandmaster title or the IM title. And they all have to win both of their games.
Yeah, it's very simple, guys, actually, this event, because no one's on pace to get a norm. What I mean by that is no one is, if they continue their current rate, they'll get a norm. But there are several players within reach of the norm, meaning that if they win out, if they crush their last 2 games, they get their norm. So we see a kind of exciting scenario, and a nice one just because it's easy for us. We know that if you don't win both your games, you're not getting your norm. So it could be no one gets a norm. It could be you see 2 or 3 people get a norm. Probably not more than that, but still an exciting finish. And it just makes these games all the more interesting to watch because they're not just playing for first, they're playing for their norm towards a GM title. And let me tell you, those things are valuable. So why don't we find another game? We'll definitely keep an eye on this one. Let us see. So, speaking of standings, this game between Josiah Stearman and Sergei Matsenko is important for the standings because basically if Matsenko scores a win here, he secures first place. No one can catch him.
Guaranteed.
And Stearman would lose his shot at an IM norm because Stearman needs to win out to score his norm. It looks like he will not win out. It looks like, to me, black is winning. See this knight on e4? That guy is very strong. Black has the bad bishop. Note how all the pawns are on light squares, meaning that...
It's over.
Yeah, he just resigns. This is hopeless. The point is all the pawns are on light squares, are on dark squares, sorry. All black's pawns are on light squares, meaning the bishop can never attack them. But here, the problem is actually much simpler than that. Let's say white wastes a move with bishop c7, black plays king h3, this pawn is just going to run up. So for example, if king here, pawn here, king here, pawn here, the knight maneuvers its way to f3, g2, that is going to be all she wrote. So Josiah gave in, Sergei secures first place in his event. He still has not really looked completely dominating. He's had a couple games where he actually should have lost, but one of the features of really strong players is they don't give up, they don't, they keep the game going when they're in trouble, and they give themselves the maximum of chances. They didn't put him away. He put away the games he needed to, and that's why he's won this event.
Indeed. We'd like to congratulate Sergei Matsenko on being the champion of the International Master Norm section here at the Norm Congress.
Yep.
We're going to have to talk to him.
We certainly would like to talk to him. Again, you're 25-60, you expect to win, but it's not always that simple. There are so many things that can go wrong in an individual game, in a tournament. So that he locked it up with 1 round to go, I'm sure he'll be happy with. And we'll see what else goes on. So why don't we get back to this game. I don't think I can take my eye off this game, to be perfectly honest. Stavroula having almost no time. Mark having about 10 minutes now, so he's also going to get low. Very good rapid player, so I don't think he's as worried about it, but at the same time, it's always rough. He did what I thought he'd try. Keep both bishops on the board. If you give up a bishop, you lose a lot of dynamic potential, meaning that it's harder to attack lots of things, it's harder to really have your position flow, have those bishops really be strong. So he wants to keep those pieces on the board to give himself maximum dynamic potential, not to mention the practical feature of making it harder for Stavroula to not blunder. It sounds like a simple thing, but quite honestly, when it's when you're low on time, not blundering is half the battle. If you can manage not to blunder when you're low, you give yourself chances. So she played knight d5. She wants one of those bishops real bad. So he played rook f5. And she plays f4. So she cuts off this rook effectively. This knight, however, I would not say is exactly a stable piece. So maybe she should be a little worried. But honestly, this is a tricky position because the bishops might be strong in theory, but right now these knights are a menace. At the moment, for example, this bishop is always attacked, so c6 is not playable. If a move like bishop c6, she might even say, hello, knight fork. I can tell you when you're low on time, facing knights is a huge pain. Because for some reason, missing a knight fork is a very easy thing to do compared to missing other types of attacks. I don't know why, just the way the human brain is wired.
Well, so this is just one of those times where, you know, flip the script here, the knights might be worth more than the bishop pair.
It is very possible, and a lot of it's because she is up a pawn here. That definitely helps her cause, but it's also because those knights are good. And I have to say, she's playing very well, really holding this together, despite having no time. Not an easy thing. She may make it look easy, but this is very difficult to play. And I would say it's difficult to play for both sides. This is not a one-sided thing. So again, he has to find a way to destabilize these knights. Right now, these knights are just sitting on the board. They're happy. They're getting fat. They're ready to take some pawns. He's got to find a way to make those knights less stable. But it's easier said than done. You play a move like h6, which looks like a reasonable try. Now, if the knight moves back here and you attack it, this knight doesn't have that many happy squares. But maybe she'll just move back to e4. Keep in mind, this bishop can always be captured. This knight might go here after you capture the bishop. The knight might go here, attacking this bishop. This guy might become a weakness at some point. For example, a move like knight e7 might become really nasty. I know that's too many arrows. I apologize in advance. Not to confuse you, but say he plays, okay, this move, I get, no one's going to put their bishop on a5. This move's ridiculous. Bear with me. I just want to illustrate. This might be quite nasty. The idea being this pawn is now under attack. Of course, rook takes here is possible, and after here, forking the rooks, you actually have this. So in this particular position, it doesn't work. But just illustrating as a point what can happen when you have these pieces. He actually went to a7, and she said, thank you very much. Another illustration of those knight forks. Because if f4 gets captured, fork on e6, and if you take the knight, it simply gets replaced, and its replacement will take this rook. This is dead loss. Of course, I don't expect him to do this. However, that's two pawns. That's two connected pawns. And if she manages to keep her position stable, keep those knights hopping, keep those pawns rolling, I think she's going to come away with the win.
It's looking really good for her right now.
It really is. And I have to say, at the beginning of this endgame, I did not think highly of her position. I thought that the knights were unstable. I thought the bishop should win. And maybe my judgment was off, but it could also be that he overestimated his position. Maybe he played a careless move or two and let her back in.
Quite possibly. I agree with you. When we first saw the position coming in, I was like, ooh.
Yeah. But she's found a way to turn it around. And quite honestly, I think sometimes when people have an opponent who's low on time, they sometimes play carelessly themselves. They expect errors. And when those errors don't pop up, when those errors don't occur, they actually decrease the standard of their own play. And that's a very dangerous thing to do. So when your opponent's low on time, it's important that you kind of forget it and just try to play good moves yourself. I'm not saying that's what happened to him. Obviously, these are all pros, but it can really happen to anyone. But right now, I'd say Stavroula's looking for the win, which might catapult her towards the lead again and keep her in the running for her GM norm.
Yes, very impressive. And you'll notice Paragua's time is coming down. When we first took a look at this game, he was at 13 minutes, I believe. Stavroula was essentially 1 minute. So, yeah, this might be quite equal in the time department soon, believe it or not.
Yeah, and considering where we were, that would be quite something. He did, in fact, play h6 in this position. And now it's just a matter of where she wants to move the knight. I would imagine she would play knight e6 check just to gain that tempo. But who knows? After knight e6 check, she could be worried about king f7, and those knights need a home. After knight e8 check, king here, those knights are just hopping, but they need a place to settle down. And it doesn't look like it might happen. However, after knight b7, the really funny thing is there's still a fork, so you can't take on f4 even here. And those knights are actually more stable than they appear. So I don't know. This is obviously far-fetched, but it could happen. And I think she might check on e6 just because she needs that tempo. If she moves the knight elsewhere, f4 is hanging. So we'll see how that goes. Other games I feel like I should mention. Pavlo Vorontsov is black in this game against Danish Boros. He is one of the leaders. I suspect that he will win this game. So Danish just played c4. This is an important moment. One of the problems is if black takes here immediately, this may win, but it allows a rook check and then king blocking this pawn. And that's a crucial tactic because now this rook is free to roam. It can attack this pawn. It can attack this pawn. And the game becomes far more complicated. Maybe you're still winning. I suspect, however, and notice, by the way, that if white ever takes this pawn, for example, if white just captured, you enter this king and pawn endgame, but black is far in the lead. You're going to just capture these pawns. It's going to be pretty much over. So this is not an option. However, let's say black says, okay, I'll pass. What does white play here? Let's say king to b3. Looks like a logical move, right? Yeah. But now I take on h5, and the problem is that if you give a check and I go here, you must go back in order to prevent this. If you try king b2, I simply say, I'll take a queen, please, trade off your rook, and we're back in the same situation, winning king and pawn endgame. So he would actually, after king takes h5, he would have to play back to b2. Now you can play king g4. You can still play this move, but after king takes f4, king takes f5, I'm guessing that's just too many pawns. And note how it's a key tempo gain with this sneaky little move, rook a7. I would suspect he'll play rook a7, rook a6, waste that tempo, but in this case, wasting the tempo actually gains a tempo.
Yeah,
so quite an important move.
Pavel Vorontsov is threatening to increase his lead here in the top spot of the Grandmaster norm section.
Indeed, and it looks like he might have to, because if Stravula comes away with the win, she's going to be chasing, so he'll need the win to stay half a point ahead of her. However, Adi Patel, the other leader, is also someone to keep an eye on. He is now playing John Bartholomew. They are here. So Adi is up in exchange. Wow, this king, I would be worried about missing a back rank checkmate here, to be honest. However, John's trying to make counterplay against the black king. He's trying to create some threats. If black's not careful, black could end up checkmated here. But I think with best play, probably Adi should actually come away with a win too, which would mean we'd actually have two people still leading, and Stravula would have to win just to stay within touching distance for first place, never mind simply the norm. But it's still very complicated. It's one of those positions where anything can happen. John is only down to a minute and a half, so he's got to play super fast. Adi has 5 minutes. As we're seeing in all these games, time is a huge factor, and it basically makes the game more random because some people will miss stuff, some people will not miss stuff, and one blunder can kind of cost you the game, regardless of how good your position is. One blunder often just means the end, even if you're better to start with. So we're kind of seeing that now. I suspect Adi should be winning, maybe, but it's just there's so many things that can go wrong for you in positions like this. And Adi plays g5. Not exactly a pretty move, but the idea is that he wants to make sure that queen stays out of the game. The queen probably has to retreat. You have to keep this square covered. Even a move like f6 is possible. Doesn't look pretty, but it keeps white at bay for the moment. And again, that extra exchange, probably the rook will come over, try to penetrate the white position. I think the extra exchange should probably do it, but it's still a long way to go before he can ever claim a win here. This is still massively complicated. So I guess we should jump back. This Stravula game should have an eye on it just because no one has any time. So yeah, the knights are hippity-hopping around the board. Knight g6 check, as mentioned. King f7. She doesn't choose my knight d8 check to b7 maneuver, probably because it looks ridiculous. She chose knight c5, also hitting the bishop. If it gets captured, the bishop's still attacked. Important feature. So he opts for bishop c6, and she plays knight a6. So she is sacrificing this pawn, but she's also attacking this one. So it's kind of a trade-off. For example, if rook takes f4, pretty sure she's going to grab this pawn. And it's a tricky position. It looks like there should be a tactic, but I don't see anything that works. First of all, if rook f1 check, she does not take and get mated. She will instead play rook d1, and everything's kind of covered. The rooks defend each other very nicely, and things seem covered. If after knight takes b4, he tries this, which looks like it's a killer, because if pawn takes bishop, the knight falls, you can take the other bishop. And this is why knights are so tricky. There are always things to take. And this knight conveniently guards both these pawns. If rook back, you can still go here. I would suspect that this is a winning position. So it's really up to Mark to find another solution, if indeed there is one. But if he doesn't take this f-pawn, I have no clue what he's actually doing. Maybe he can try another bishop move, but I think that she's going to take on b4 no matter what. So it still looks quite promising. But again, low on time, anything truly can happen.
Are there any games that we haven't taken a look at yet that are close to finishing up?
Let us see. So that game finished. This one finished. Yes, I think this game between Grabinsky and Torres is quite interesting. I don't know how close it is to finishing, but it's certainly pretty nuts. At the moment, I kind of like Torres' position simply because I think that this pawn and the rook coming down is going to be really tough to stop. White has a pawn also. This e6 pawn looks nasty, but the problem is you need a way to force it through. So for example, after e6, this bishop still kind of covers. It might be pinned, but it's not really pinned because this rook is defended. And if you have to take the bishop, it's just too much time. So I think you can even just play b2, say whatever, do what you want, do your worst. If you give a check, I play king h7. The important thing is this is still covered. I just don't really see a way to force that through, whereas this b-pawn is just a battering ram. It's just shattering white's position. You have to play rook b1, rook c1, and again, I just think black's too fast. So it looks to me like unless Aaron can find a really nice resource here, he's probably going to end up on the worst side of things. I'm not exactly sure if there's a particular resource he could have here, but it just looks like he's not fast enough. So Torres picking up a win, which is an important result for him, considering, if you recall, he long castled, lost 3 games in a row, and it's always brutal to try to recover from that. So it says a lot about him that he's able to play such a nice game and defeat a strong player after losing 3 in a row.
Well, and Grabinsky, unfortunately for him, will miss out on his norm. How much frustration do you feel like a player could go through and experience coming to a specific norm tournament and at least having the possibility this far in and then losing the possibility?
It really varies on the player. Some players really tie themselves into these norm results. So if they miss that one game, they miss that one result, they get especially upset. Others are kind of like, it'll happen when it happens. I'm going to be strong enough, especially if a player's going up the ranks, getting to 24, 2,500. They know they're going to get there. They don't care so much. But it's always a bit of a wound. I would say it's less so when you need 2 out of 2. That feels like a lot. If you need to score perfect, it doesn't feel like you're that close yet. You know, it's one thing if you need to win in that last round. But if you have to go 2 out of 2, that's a tough result for anyone to do. So
it's not exactly something you would play for a win versus a safe draw.
I mean, I would say that you always try to keep your chances open. You wouldn't go crazy. Some people do. But for the most part, you're not going to go crazy. But what I would say is that you keep your options open. You try to make it so you can still snag that norm. But I would say that when it's 2 out of 2, it's tough. But when it's you need like 1 out of 2 or you need 1.5 out of 2, like a score that seems at least more obtainable, and you miss out, those are the ones that hurt. Especially if it's that last norm, especially if it's some crucial situation. Those are the ones that are painful. But as far as for Aaron, I mean, you know, needing 2 out of 2, playing 2 strong players, that's a tough ask. Yeah. I'm sure he'll be disappointed, but you know, it's more understandable. And indeed, this did happen. E6, B2 happened. Rook's headed back to B1. Rook C1's coming. I think that Luis is gonna take care of this one. So let's see. I know we have a particular guest in the studio who might be interviewed fairly soon.
Oh, indeed. We will have Executive Director of the Chess Club, Tony Rich,
yes,
at this table. We'll be asking him about the upcoming Grand Chess Tour, the U.S. Championship, and, of course, this tournament.
Indeed.
So that should be a fun interview.
Another result, by the way, Pavlo Vorontsov did beat Danish Boros, so he maintains the lead. Will at least be tied for the lead. Adi Patel's the only one who can catch him this round with a win. So yeah, it pretty much happened the way I suspected. He played Rook A5 instead of Rook A7. Rook A7 is a pretty weird looking move. I was just trying to be fancy. And Danish instead tried to activate the king. But quite honestly, you're essentially playing down this rook. It's kind of tough to do anything. So he simply goes around with his king. The idea here is if white continues to follow, he could play a move like Rook A3. White's out of moves. The rook can never move. This pawn would just get captured. So the king would have to move. This king comes in pretty much dead. So he tried king d4, king f3. You could try to play for a stalemate, but it seems kind of unlikely as considering this pawn can always move. Rook f1 check, king e2, king d2. So again, he's just running out of moves very slowly. If king e4, king c3, so Dinesh tries to sack his pawn, but there's nothing to do. King b2 comes next. Time to throw in the towel.
Oh man, poor Boros.
Yeah, he's had a pretty rough event. He had a really nice win against Tatev actually in the first round. I thought he played very well, but since then he's struggled a bit. But it's a rough tournament. It's one of those things where if you're not on form, if you're not watching at all your games, I mean, you can lose to anyone in the event. For sure. It's not an event. It's not like a Swiss where you lose a couple games, you have a bad event, but then you play some much weaker players, you get your confidence back. Round robins, you do not have that luxury.
It could be quite brutal.
It can be very brutal. I can tell you from past experience, believe me. So let me see if there are any results in. I'm not seeing anything. Yeah, seems like everything's still going. So
well, perhaps this will be a good time to take our first break. And when we come back, we will have the executive director of the St. Louis Chess Club, international arbiter Tony Rich. He'll be joining us, talking about the upcoming Grand Chess Tour 2018 and the U.S. Championship. So we'll be back here at uschesschamps.com in just a few moments.
A question on Twitter from Damas. I should not have pronounced that. That was a bit of a trap, yeah?
For those of you who are new to chess, it might look like ba3 is an illegal move here, because white advances pawn 2 squares, not 1. But it's still something we call en passant. And you can do that, but you have to do it instantly. You can't wait for a move, like let's say play king e7, king g2, and now try, because should I do it?
I'm sorry. This is too funny for words.
This is a software glitch? I'm pretty sure there's not a lot.
Lawrence. Hello, Lawrence. Yeah, I'll play 4 against Lawrence. And now he's going to play something against me which we discussed at length during the course of my stay. Yeah, he told me this is excellent. d5, this was what I was kind of hoping for, because now I think e5 is quite strong. No, Lawrence, this is not how chess works. Sadly, it would be much, much more fun if chess actually worked like this. But I don't think it does. Or maybe it does. Well, that's me regretting what I just said. How did I get from there to here is a little bit beyond me. And what's worse, I will never hear the end of it. My quality of life has just gone downhill tremendously because I'm actually sharing the office with the guy.
Hello, chess fans, and welcome back to the broadcast for the 2018 St. Louis Norm Congress. I'm Ben Simon, along with my very special guest at this time. He is the executive director of the St. Louis Chess Club, international arbiter Tony Rich. Tony, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
And he is the deputy arbiter for this event as well. How is the tournament going so far in your perspective?
You know, it's going well so far. The players seem to all be enjoying themselves. One of the things that we always say before either a norm tournament or the classics or even U.S. championships is, I want this to be the best event you've ever played in. Now, it's hard to make that happen every single time, but we work hard to make that the case. Whether it's the temperature in the room or the lighting or the food that's available for the players, we work hard to make them all enjoy themselves. And I think they are.
Now, we know that these kinds of tournaments aren't too common, where specifically everybody who doesn't already have the title can earn a norm. Why is the chess club going to such lengths to put such events together?
It's a great question. You know, it's funny. St. Louis chess, up until maybe a couple of years ago, suffered from the same problem that norm participants suffer from, and that's when you're trying to find an event for players rated somewhere between 22 and 2,600, let's say, it's really difficult. You know, all of the organizers with the big bucks want to invite Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura, and all the organizers who are doing it on a volunteer effort have a hard time raising the kind of prize funds and conditions available for players. So for us, we saw this as kind of a sweet spot, something that didn't really exist in chess or was maybe lacking a little bit. And we saw it as an opportunity to grow chess in America, and I think it's working well.
And Josh and I were talking before in this tournament about how a lot of these players were seen for the first time, and maybe a few years from now, who knows, you know, they might be some of the elite.
I remember our early norm tournaments whenever it was players like Robert Hess and Jeffrey Zhang and Sam Shanklin, and now look at them. I mean, these are all veteran grandmasters, if you can call them that. But, you know, they represent the U.S. on the Olympiad teams. They play in the U.S. Championship every year. So you see a lot of strong players come out of this, and it's a chance for us to get to know them whenever they're still improving.
And coming up, there's another strong tournament that maybe everyone won't be familiar with the entire field, but I'm talking about the Spring Chess Classic, the next one in the seasonal series of tournaments. Tell us about the Spring Classic.
Sure, yeah, as you mentioned, the Spring Classic is one of 4 tournaments. It's a seasonal event. We hold it in the spring, summer, fall, and winter. 2 sections, 10-player round robins, kind of similar to this, but we really up the game. The top section average rating is something like 2650 typically. The lower section average rating is about 2550. And for the most part, I think all of the players have been GMs that have competed in the event, maybe a couple of exceptions here and there. So the Classic Series provide us with an opportunity for a few things. One, we can provide training opportunities for young up-and-coming players, American or otherwise. We can provide training opportunities for the women in chess in America, think U.S. Women's Championship field kind of players. And another opportunity is for the collegiate level players to also have a chance to test their mettle against their peers. So the Spring Chess Classic actually is coming up. It's March 6th through the 14th. Prize fund for that will be $32,000 combined between the 2 sections. And we have some pretty big name players across the events. Alex Onashuk and Lazaro Bruzan will lead our top section, both with ratings of almost 2,700. In our lower section, Alexander Fear from Brazil and Viktor Mikalevsky from Israel will be competing. So, you know, the fields are really super competitive, super strong, a lot like this. You know, if you lose one game, you're not necessarily going to get an easy pairing the next round.
For sure. And we will be broadcasting that tournament, by the way,
that's right,
on USChessChamps.com. So very exciting stuff. Very much looking forward to that. So beyond the Spring Classic, the chess club's original love, the U.S. Chess Championship, what can you tell us about the U.S. Championship this year, and the Women's Championship, of course?
Sure. It's our 10th year, first of all, hosting both events. It's also the 10th year that the Chess Club and Scholastic Center has been open. So it's a real milestone for us. It's an opportunity to bring back all of those great players that we consider our extended chess family. You know, once a year they all come back to St. Louis and hang out with us for a while. So that's great. The U.S. Championship and the Women's Championship, you can expect a lot this year. First of all, the event is April 16th through the 30th. We'll have live commentary on USChessChamps.com as well. Total prize fund combined for the events is almost $300,000.
My goodness.
$50,000 for the first place winner of the championship, $25,000 for first place in the U.S. Women's Championship. And it'll be interesting to see if these players are going to bring what they brought last year. You know, I'm sure you remember that Wesley So won the U.S. Championship and Sabina Foiger won the U.S. Women's Championship. So both will be competing again in their respective fields. Wesley has to best out Hikaru Nakamura and other strong players like Fabiano Caruana, I mean, top 10 players in the world. Sabina still has her arch rivals that have been in the perennial U.S. women's champions, Irina Krush and Anna Zatonski. So it'll be very competitive, very tough event, and we're looking forward to it again.
Man, this U.S. Championship, I mean, it's always been a strong event, but the U.S. Championship now compared to like 10 years ago is simply a different beast.
It really is. Part of that has to do with the size of the field. When America's Foundation for Chess ran the event, you know, they had very large format, 32, 64 players sometimes. That brings down the average rating. In fact, our first year holding the event was a 24-player Swiss. So the average rating does drop a little bit. But whenever you have these 12 players, I mean, it really is the who's who of American chess.
And then after the U.S. Championship, we can all get excited about the 4th Grand Chess Tour.
That's right.
So the Grand Chess Tour is a combination of Paris, Leuven, London, and then the 2 St. Louis tournaments, which is what we're really looking forward to. And so tell us first about, there's a little bit of a switch-up this year with the 2 St. Louis tournaments.
That's right. In fact, there are 2 switch-ups. Last year, Paris came before Leuven. This year, it'll be reversed. Leuven comes before Paris. And then St. Louis Rapid and Blitz will come before the Sinquefield Cup. So the idea is that over the course of the year, players will compete across the 3 Rapid and Blitz events. Then they'll play the classic event of the Sinquefield Cup. Now, at the end of all of that, we'll take the top 4 players, combined scores from all 4 events, and they will play in London at the end of the year for the capstone, the postseason of the Grand Chess Tour. So that format will be a 4-player knockout, and it will feature a combination of Rapid and Blitz and maybe even classic games too.
I love that. I love that there's a grand finale, a knockout for like a true champion, you know. It
prevents somebody from running away with the event early on. You know, if Magnus Carlsen has a fantastic result in the first 3 events, he's going to be really, really hard to catch by the time you make it to London. The way this works is the 4 players that are finishing up after the Sinquefield Cup, whichever 4 qualify for London, the slate's erased. Now they start from 0 again, and it's just me versus you, mano a mano.
All right, and I'm not sure if we already showed it on the screen, but the Sinquefield Cup, you know, the chess club's strongest tournament ever, traditionally. And with the, what is this, the 6th year now for the Sinquefield Cup.
That's right. I remember our very first year whenever it was just 4 players, Magnus Carlsen and Levon Aronian against Hikaru Nakamura. And can you name the 4th?
Gadakamsky.
Yes. That's right. So, you know, the Grand Chess Tour kind of revamped the Sinquefield Cup. You know, we went from 4 players initially. The following year, it was a 6-player double round robin. And then we settled into this 10-player round robin format with the Grand Chess Tour.
And it's been impressive ever since, for real. Okay, well, Tony, I appreciate you coming down here from your busy schedule upstairs, and I'll let you get back to that. But thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And let's go and check out the latest from Chess24, one of our great partners at USChessChamps.com. When we come back, we will have more analysis.
A moment comes in chess when you need to test yourself at a different level. Chess24 Premium offers the tools that you need to reach your maximum potential. From hundreds of interactive video lessons to becoming part of the Chess24 community. You can analyze with friends or coach your students live. You get 24/7 coverage of chess news and events, access to premium analysis and commentary, and the chance to interact with grandmasters and other top players and coaches. Get advice from the best and even challenge them to a battle. Be the best chess player you can be. It's time to level up your game with Chess24 Premium membership.
Question on Twitter from Damas. I should not have pronounced that. That was a bit of a trap, yeah?
For those of you who are new to chess, it might look like ba3 is an illegal move here because white advances pawn 2 squares, not 1. But it's a little something we call en passant. And you can do that, but you have to do it instantly. You can't wait for a move, like let's say play king e7, king g2, and now try, because could I do it?
I'm sorry. This is too funny for words.
This is a software glitch? I'm pretty sure there's not a lot.
Lawrence. Hello, Lawrence. Yeah, I'll play 4 against Lawrence. And now he's going to play something against me which we discussed at length during the course of my stay. Yeah, he told me this is excellent. D5, this was what I was kind of hoping for, because now I think e5 is quite strong. No, Lawrence, this is not how chess works. Sadly, it would be much, much more fun if chess actually worked like this. But I don't think it does. Or maybe it does. Well, that's me regretting what I just said. How did I get from there to here is a little bit beyond me. And what's worse, I will never hear the end of it. My quality of life has just gone downhill tremendously because I'm actually sharing the office with the guy.
There's a weekend vacation on one tank trip in a nearby city you won't want to skip. St. Louis is the stop for non-stop fun. So much fun for your family. Infinity plus a ton. There's museums full of art and super fun slides. Upside down concretes, twisty turny rides. Houses full of magic, some with butterflies. Gardens growing flowers, parks with giant eyes. St. Louis is the stop for non-stop fun. So much fun for your family. Infinity plus a ton.
Hello, chess fans. Ben Simon and Grandmaster Josh Friedel back here for coverage of the penultimate round 8 of the Norm Congress. And Josh, we have a big result.
We do. Stavrula Solakidou, remember that knights versus bishops battle? Well, she traded those knights in for lots of hefty material and 3 massive pawns. As you can see in this position, it is basically over. He tried to get those pawns rolling. It looked like it's tricky because the rook's attacking, but she had a really nice move to end the game. Rook f2 check. That idea means the king has to walk into a very unfortunate g line. Rook check. If the king moves to the side, even if you just play here, it's just over. The pawn's blocked. These guys are just rolling up the board. And of course, if bishop check, you can say check, get a queen, and this is pretty much dead. So after rook f2 check, Mark resigns. Stavrula moves up. She is not in the lead, however, as Vorontsov Vorontsov won his game, which means so he's still on the half-a-point lead. However, Stavrula keeps her norm chances and chances to finish first alive. She has to win her last round, I'm assuming with the black pieces, actually against Tatev. So it will not be easy, but she is definitely can score a GM norm. She already scored an IM norm. And I don't know how you're as strong as she is, rated where she is, and not have any IM norms. I assume it's an accident somehow. But she's scored an IM norm quite easily she's already over half a point that's needed for the IM norm.
Tomorrow's going to be really exciting.
Tomorrow will be awesome. And we'll see how Tatev does. If Tatev wins, then they're actually both playing for the GM norm. Why don't we actually check out Tatev's game? We haven't seen it yet. It looks kind of crazy. My guess, I think she's been defending most of this game, so a win would be unlikely. However, as you guys can see, she secured this pass b-pawn. White has a pass g-pawn. It's really about whose pawn proves to be stronger. One of the reasons I like white is because I feel like more centralized pieces, more centralized king should have the better of it. However, this has gone pretty crazy. I would say anything can still happen in this game. I would give him the edge, but I really don't know what exactly is going on and whether he'll be able to reel in the point. As usual, of course, neither player has much time at all. She has, it looks like, barely over a minute. He has less than a minute. Anything can happen in these games. So we'll see what happens. Let's see if we can move around elsewhere. We talked about Adi Patel's game. Now, Adi Patel, if he wins, he is tied for the lead with Vorontsov. However, John Bartholomew, it looks like, has a pretty active queen. My guess would be that here, Adi is going to give perpetual, meaning it'll be king h1, some move like this, check. This queen is simply way too powerful, as we can see. And I have a feeling the game will end in perpetual right here. So Adi will be tied for second with Stavrula, who I believe we're going to be talking to in just a minute. So that should be good, get her perspective on her win. And let's see. Going back to Tatev's game for the moment. Yeah, looks like lots of stuff going on here. Again, I'm not exactly sure what's going on. Looks like just kind of a mess to me. But again, I think that the knight and rook a little bit stronger for whites. And this b-pawn alone with the rook probably is not going to get the job done. That being said, still pretty complicated. not exactly sure what will happen here. But we do have a guest in the studio who I'd like to talk to. We have Stavrula Stulakidu. Yeah, something like that. You can say the name for the audience to get it right. I should have been practicing the last several days, but what are you going to be doing? So you won your game. Congratulations. Still in the run for the GM norm. You already clinched your IM norm, so congratulations.
Oh,
I assume
I didn't even know.
You didn't even know. I assume at 2410 IM norms are, you're just achieving them everywhere. You just don't know it. So why don't you take us through your game?
Yeah.
So I liked your position, then I didn't like your position. And then all of a sudden it was good.
Something like that.
Yeah.
For me too.
So
yeah.
opening expected more or less?
Not at all.
Not at all, okay.
He doesn't really, he never
He usually
that.
plays Sicilian, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so this was a little bit surprising. Doesn't seem like his style, but maybe he wanted to play it solid.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Queen
Castles,
E2,
Queen E2.
Rook E8, Knight C4, Knight D7, Bishop D2.
Yep. At first I thought this was going to be a nice quiet game, and then I saw you castle queenside. I'm like, aha! Not so much.
Yeah, castle queenside is pretty trendy, I think, lately, but okay, I didn't know in such detail.
Yeah,
Position,
so the knight moved c6.
Rook
This all
C1.
looked fairly normal,
yes.
right?
So b5. I was also considering knight a5, but maybe...
Knight a5 looked kind of interesting. I thought maybe he could even ignore it, something like
Like-
bishop b6.
And if I take, it's like...
Take, I thought you were just
Queen
losing too
D6.
much time, yeah.
Yes, maybe.
I mean,
Like
also your
before?
knight, I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know if I trust your knight
Yeah,
here.
that's why I played knight e3.
Even a move like c6 and this coming, I don't know, it seems like
Yeah.
probably, I mean, if you have to play c3, it's going to be kind of ugly, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know,
probably.
maybe. But you could have tried it. It didn't look unplayable. But okay, knight
Yeah, but I thought
e3
that
looked
the
normal.
knight belonged there.
Yeah. So I don't know. It was very strange. I wasn't sure whose attack was really stronger in this position.
I didn't even know.
Knight
Me neither.
f5,
So knight f5 and
Yeah.
g5 is coming.
b4, g5. Yeah. So did you expect him to play with g6? Is that forced?
Yes, maybe. But because if b3, g6,
So b3. Oh, you're going to play g6.
I think so.
Uh-huh. So this is interesting. So b3 trying to mainly undermine this pawn, I'm assuming.
Yes.
But the problem is there's not enough pieces to really make that many threats here for him.
Yeah, I think I have...
I mean, a3, I guess, but there's no, like, you can't get the queen stuck. Like, the queen needs to be out here. Then you're in business, right? But the queen is stuck, so that makes things kind of annoying. G6 is very interesting.
g6, I think.
It looks kind of nasty. I mean, mainly because, like, if you ever play h6, of course, you're going to get sacked on.
Yeah.
And if you take,
Rook takes, g5 open, and
king here, bishop back, but this looks, I mean, this looks
some knight takes c5
yeah,
ideas with queen
no,
h5.
this has to be
something
terrible.
like
Okay,
that.
I agree. So he decided to play g6 himself. You checked.
Yeah. But here, maybe, I don't know. No, not knight h6.
So you
Before.
couldn't take on f6 first?
Yeah, before, not take.
So check?
Oh, no, before take,
Oh, okay.
I think.
Here.
I'm not sure. I was calculating what...
So
take,
takes?
take.
So queen has to take.
Even knight takes c5, I was thinking.
Knight takes e5, wow.
But
Yeah, because we didn't get a chance to look at this. This was before I came on. So so
it
queen
was
takes?
crazy, I couldn't find queen h5, but maybe no.
Queen h5. What on earth? Maybe. I don't know. So the idea, of course, is this is the threat.
Yes,
so
maybe knight f8. That was-
knight f8. So the idea is the queen is now defended.
Yeah.
So the problem is also this is kind of secure now. So I'm not exactly
Yes.
sure where your attack's coming from. Maybe you have a move like this, but it seems like black can always capture. Maybe not quite enough, but this seems kind of unnecessary.
Yes, definitely.
But here, is there a reason why you can't take first and then play knight g4?
Oh my god.
I have to tell you guys, this happens all the time. We're calculating, when you're actually calculating the game as opposed to just analyzing it casually, you can miss anything. Anything you can miss. So I'm guessing that this would be pretty good, right?
It seems really good,
Yeah.
actually.
So the idea, of course, is that the queen's attacked. If you try to counterattack the
God.
queen, the key is that this rook is hit. So this is with check.
So, I cannot find any move for black, actually.
It looks pretty bad, to be quite honest.
Oh my god.
So this was maybe a possibility.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, because here, this pawn actually comes in handy. It kind of gets in the way. Knight g takes
So I
h5.
guess I was winning it. I mean,
It looked really strong. I didn't think he would play the way he played. I thought he had to play a couple defensive moves maybe earlier. But then here, the tables really turned on you. So queen f6, here, were you a little worried? Were you thinking just you weren't sure?
Yeah, I was definitely worried. I mean,
I thought you might try knight back to c4, followed by trying an e5 type move. But again, it didn't look ideal, right?
Yeah.
This isn't what you want. You're not quite attacking. I didn't like, once you gave up
Yeah,
the
lost
bishop, I
control
thought that it
completely.
was, I actually liked black's position in a lot of
Yeah.
ways here.
I
But you
thought
turned it around, so why don't you show us how that happened? Rook f8,
yeah, rook f8.
you weren't sure about?
I didn't really.
Like, I thought that he would honestly just play like, I mean, okay, maybe this is a bit lame, but something like takes, and even just h6.
Yeah,
just
maybe like
keep
that.
this pawn and let the bishops kind of do their work. This knight is very awkward. I just wasn't sure. But at the same time, if you can get away with taking stuff and maybe this pawn becomes weak,
Yeah.
I don't know. It seemed
pretty
like
double-edged.
I thought that black should be doing well. But losing this pawn was a bit annoying. So bishop here, h4. I wasn't quite sure, but rook f4, bishop e6. You
Yeah,
grab the
and we
pawn.
already have time travel.
Yeah,
I
so
already
here
did.
you have no time. It's pretty tough to see what to do. But it seemed like the problem is that this bishop is just not secure. You do
Yeah,
all this with
e5
tempo, and that
before.
became a real problem for black. So here I already thought you were making good counterplay. Here,
Yeah, maybe he should take.
I was looking at taking.
Yes.
So captures, right?
Take
Takes
and rook
here.
h3.
So the problem is this guy is still quite weak. Here, threatening mates. You must
And
block.
take h4.
Takes h4, and you defend this pawn. So maybe this would have been an interesting try. I don't know, this e-pawn might become actually kind of dangerous, but for the moment, the white king is a little bit suspicious, and that makes things quite difficult. Maybe a move instead of there, maybe king c1 is possible.
And after.
And the idea would be after takes, maybe you can get away with this. I'm not sure. This h-pawn could be nasty, but if the king gets into the game, you have a lot of pawns. And
It's crazy.
I'm not so sure. But again, like we were basically in the same situation as you. We have no time trying to figure this out. But here I thought that it was already, the knights were becoming really hippity-hoppity, and I thought that something bad would happen to him, actually. Bishop f5 was a bit surprising. I thought he might go to d7, but I don't know, nothing really looked that amazing. So any key moments you want to point out here, or were you just playing and just...
No!
I thought you might take this pawn, actually, but this move is kind of tricky, because now we were showing this, that after here you can just take it, and you have the nice fork. So this was kind of a nice trick. He took this pawn, you played back, and the problem is these bishops just don't have enough squares. The knights are dancing around.
Yeah, suddenly.
This is weak, this is hit. I thought your position here was actually quite good.
Yeah.
And still this pawn is not capturable, or is it?
Actually.
That could spoil things. So maybe, but you, oh no, you can take here maybe. Take, you have this fork. Although even if takes, I don't know. Yeah. Even this is not so clear for you. Probably takes.
I actually calculated it.
You calculated this, but again, when you have no time, you're just trying to play your best moves. You're not worrying about everything being perfect. But he played rook f5, and I thought after f4 it just looked really good for you.
Yes, rook f5.
This was probably a key mistake for him. And after this, you just decided, look, I'm just taking everything. Check. I saw this position. I thought you might try this move with the idea that after here, knight here, and you have this, so this is still not capturable.
Yeah.
Maybe too cute. I don't know. I thought this looked really funny, though, with all these pieces. But somehow this... But bishop c6, then you have knight a5. You're hitting the bishop again. You have this guy coming.
Yeah.
I don't know. Although the rook hangs, you have to be a little careful.
It seems crazy.
It's still crazy, yeah.
Bishop e4.
But what you did seemed to work out very simply. No unnecessary stuff. You go after the b pawn, and the tactics just don't seem to work for black. If you take here, always c6. If rook f1, always rook c1. So bishop went back. And it's funny, you don't usually see a position where the knights dominate the bishops, but it seems like when they're escorted by all these pawns, that's exactly what happened. I didn't get to see much of this.
But here I started getting worried again
Yeah,
with
so
the h-pawn.
And I should point out to the viewers, you're not offering a draw, you're just trying to play moves to make time control. So you get the pawns rolling, and yeah. The h-pawn looked kind of nasty,
yes, but fortunately it has
your
rook
e-pawn
e1
is
and
really
fast.
strong, and the bishops just can't defend that well. So rook h2, bishop takes c5, king back. Yeah, I thought that you have lots of good things. I thought you'd play knight b7, you played knight e4, which is also quite strong. The idea, of course, is if takes, you give this check.
Yeah. Also knight d6 I want.
And you want knight d6, so he sacks, but this is just too strong. And then the nice finishing move, rook f2, and I've already pointed this out to people that this check is quite strong.
Yeah.
So you move up, you recover from a tough loss last night.
Oh, yes.
And, yeah, because I thought you were probably headed towards a draw, but your pieces got a little tangled. But so you're now, you know, still in the running, a GM norm with a win in the last round. You play Tata.
Let's see.
And I thought it would be maybe that you guys are the leaders of the tournament playing in the last round. Actually, if she wins her game, she's still playing.
No, it's over.
No, oh, she lost. So, so she's no longer playing for a GM norm. Yeah, it looks like. Well, that's kind of nasty. So the idea here, of course, is that this guy can't move because the queen. If the knight moves back, then you just check here, and this one queen. So I guess Tatev did lose her game, but you know, still all to play for in the last round. What are your thoughts going into the last round?
I haven't really realized.
You're still kind of in shock. Okay, understandable.
Yeah. And of course, because of yesterday's game.
Yeah.
I took too many risks and I blundered.
Yeah, I mean, I thought you were trying to win. I thought at some point maybe you could play G5 in that position, but
yes.
But okay, I mean, still.
Instead of rook d8.
Yeah.
I even remember exactly.
You remember the exact moment. That's what happens. But
I tried to play for the win,
but it's not so easy to do. Things can easily work against you. But you recovered from both your losses this tournament pretty well, and you're in good shape. You're still not in the lead of the tournament, I believe. Pavlo Vorontsov is still in the lead. You're tied for second. But obviously, you're playing for your norm. I think you have the black pieces in the last round.
Black pieces, yeah.
So are you going to just go crazy trying to win, or are you going to play solid, or are you going to work in between? Somewhere in between. Well, congratulations on your IM norm. Best of luck in the last round for your GM norm.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me. All right. Why don't we take a break? We'll be right back.
Be surprised. Be intrigued. Be delighted. The World Chess Hall of Fame in St. Louis is nothing you'd expect and everything you love. 3 galleries highlight the history, culture, and creativity behind the game. Explore chess in ways you never imagined. It's a one-of-a-kind cultural institution where rare artifacts and world-class art play together. The World Chess Hall of Fame. Mind, art, experience.
You could fly to Venice, or Paris, or even Copenhagen. You could fly all over the world. But why? When you could just come to St. Louis. Your trip begins at ExploreStLouis.com.
Hi, I'm Mike Matheny. Whether you play chess for fun or want to boost your child's academic performance, come visit the Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis, right here in the chess capital of the U.S. From a welcoming, diverse environment to a scholastic outreach program, now in over 100 schools, our center, across from the World Chess Hall of Fame in the Central West End, has it all. So whether you've played for years or never before, we invite you to experience all chess has to offer.
A moment comes in chess when you need to test yourself at a different level. Chess 24 Premium offers the tools that you need to reach your maximum potential. From hundreds of interactive video lessons to becoming part of the Chess 24 community. You can analyze with friends or coach your students live. You get 24/7 coverage of chess news and events, access to premium analysis and commentary, and the chance to interact with grandmasters and other top players and coaches. Get advice from the best and even challenge them to a battle. Be the best chess player you can be. It's time to level up your game with Chess 24 Premium membership.
There's a weekend vacation, a one-tank trip in a nearby city you won't want to skip. St. Louis is the stop for non-stop fun. So much fun for your family, infinity plus a ton. There's museums full of art and super fun slides. Upside-down concretes, twisty, turny rides. Houses full of magic, some with butterflies. Gardens growing flowers, parks with giant eyes. St. Louis is the stop for non-stop fun. So much fun for your family, infinity plus a ton. There's a weekend vacation, a one-tank trip in a nearby city you won't want to skip. St. Louis is the stop for non-stop fun. So much fun for your family, infinity plus a ton. There's museums full of art and super fun slides. Upside-down concretes, twisty, turny rides. Houses full of magic, some
We're back with the St. Louis Norm Congress, where we are just having fun, infinity plus a ton. I'm Ben Simon, along with Grandmaster Josh Friedel, having a ball here. The penultimate round has officially ended. All games have completed, and we're looking to get another player in here to talk to them about their game. But what did we miss the last few minutes here, Josh?
As I mentioned at the end of the interview with Stavrula, Tatev did lose her game against Hamrakulov, so she is out of norm contention. However, she's still having an excellent tournament, a lot to play for. Hamrakulov recovering from sort of a rough result, so he's getting back in there. But as you can see, there's no stability. If you're leading, you could be losing the next day. If you're in last place, you could be winning the next day. So really anything can happen, but she is out of norm contention. John Bartholomew drew against Adi Patel, and neither of these players now are in norm contention either. That game ended, as I predicted, in a perpetual in this position. The white queen simply too strong on f7, threatening to take the world and probably checkmate. So Adi decided, you know what, I'm going to just keep checking your king. So all the games in all the sections are done, as we mentioned. Another game, Carlos Torres did win as black against Aaron Grabinsky, so he recovers from his 0-0 result. As I predicted, he did queen that b-pawn, and upper rook is just too much. And other results that we missed, Brandon Jacobson had an advantage against Chi Yu Zhou. Both players not really in contention for anything, but I'll tell you, what you're always trying to fight in these tournaments, you don't want to. No one wants to finish last place. And right now, Chi Yu's in last, but she could have lost, but she defended well. Finally secured a draw in this queen endgame. So why don't we take a quick look at the standings?
Yes, please. Let's do.
So in the top section, Vorontsov maintains the lead with 5.5. Adi Patel and Stavrula Solokidu are chasing with 5. Note how Stavrula is chasing a norm because 6 will get her a norm. Adi, unfortunately, cannot score a norm with 6. He needed 6.5. So there's only one norm seeker here. But as we can see, everyone's playing for first place. John Bartholomew in 4th place has a very outside chance, but really it's going to be first place between those 3 players. We'll see what happens. I look forward to it.
Well, and also remember there are no playoffs, so there could be a situation where we do have more than one first place winner.
Indeed. I should point out that Tatev Abrahamyan, if she gets 4.5, will secure an IM norm. She already has about 60, so she doesn't actually need it, but I feel like I should mention it. Why not, you know?
Right.
So why don't we check out the standings for the IM norm, see what's happening there. First place is secure. Sergei Matsenko wins the IM norm section with 6.5 points, 1.5 ahead of Josh Kolas. Josh Kolas needs a win in the last round to secure his IM norm, but having an excellent result. Huge pack of 4s. That's a lot of 4s, Ben.
It is. That's what you call a log jam right there, but it's quite frankly irrelevant with Matsenko being the champion of this section.
It is, and none of those players can score norms, but believe me, everyone's trying to get a good result. It's much nicer to walk away from the tournament. I've had tournaments where I play horribly, but if I win that last round, I walk away feeling all right about myself. So I would say that every player there is still going to have some incentive to walk away from the last round with a win.
And this is affecting the prize money in a unique way, because even though we have many players who cannot norm anymore, there are prizes to be won. And in fact, for both fields, 6th through 10th is the same amount for both fields. And there you see the Grandmaster section prize fund. See, 6 through 10, everybody walks away with, as you said, about enough to pay their expenses.
About enough to pay their expenses, maybe a little bit extra, depending. But the point is that, 600, 700, 800, that it's not a big difference, but people really just want to finish well. Finishing 4th in a tournament this strong is not a bad result for most players. So as you can see, it's not just about the prizes. Those kind of compensate you, but it's really about just, it's nice to finish higher.
And the
no one wants to finish last. Yeah.
Exactly. The International Master Norm section, their prize fund, it works the same way. If there is a tie for a placing, what they do is let's say that 3rd and 4th place is tied. They would add up the prizes. Okay, so you get $1,300 and split it, $650 each. So they just add up the prizes and just split it. 6 through 10, tie, well, it's all 400 anyway. So
yep, won't matter too much. But yes, you add up all the prizes and divide them. But again, I think the difference between $100, $150, $50 for these players, not a huge difference. It's more about getting that nice finish.
I noticed that Stavrula Solakidou, rather.
It's all right, none of us get it right.
Right. She wasn't really showing her cards as to whether she was going to be playing for a win tomorrow. Would you be if you were in
Of course not, but I always like to ask, just in case. Sometimes people are like, you know what, I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to be an animal tomorrow. I'm going to start out with H5, H4 on the first 5 moves. You don't really expect that. Most people give a pretty moderated answer anyway, but I thought it's always good to ask because you don't really know what people do. Some people just play solid and see if their opponent gives them chances. Other people play more aggressively. I don't think that Stavrula is the type of player who just plays solid anyway. She seems pretty aggressive. The 2 equal positions she had, something crazy happened. Last night she had an equal position and lost. Honestly, I don't think that that's in her blood to play it just completely safe anyway. I think we'll just see an interesting game. Tatev, of course, very aggressive player. So why don't we actually check out the pairings for the last rounds so we can see what we're looking at.
Uniquely important. And actually, remember, this is not going to be tonight. This is tomorrow. Today's round got its own day, and tomorrow will have its own day as well.
Indeed. So for those of you tuning in at 5 p.m. for the last round, you're going to be supremely disappointed. I would recommend tuning in at 11 tomorrow. Of course, we'll be on at 2 talking about the last games. So we have, again, Tatev Abrahamyan against Stavrula Solakidou is a key game, not just for first place. Obviously, if Stavrula wins, she has a shot at that, but a win will get her a GM norm as well. And also, we have the tournament leader, Pavlo Vorontsov, as white against Akshat Chandra. Akshat has been playing not his best chess. He's lost a couple. Is Vorontsov going to secure his tournament victory? It seems quite possible, but we'll have to see. And Adi Patel also tied for second place. Can't get his norm, but he's shooting for first too, as white against Harmerkulov, who scored a nice win for him today against Tatev.
And then the final round pairings for the International Master Norm section tomorrow at 11 a.m. here from St. Louis. You can see this on uschesschamps.com.
Indeed. Josh Kolas is the only one still playing for a norm, as black against Brandon Jacobson. I would say that Josh will really try to win this game. Jacobson, if you recall, started out 0-4, but he scored a win in the 5th round. He's recovered somewhat. The last several rounds he's done pretty well. He drew today, maybe slightly disappointingly, but he's no longer in the basement. He's no longer in the cellar. I don't think it'll be an easy game for Josh, but I think he has excellent chances to score that norm. Otherwise, Matsenko, we'll get to see him against the 12-year-old Justin Wang. And that should be quite an interesting one. But Matsenko's already secured first place. He won't do anything crazy, but we'll definitely see some nice games tomorrow.
I can't wait. It's going to be very exciting, Josh.
Indeed.
And we hope that you join us tomorrow at 2 p.m. and even catch it a little bit earlier, because remember, the round starts at 11 a.m. Central. We'll see you at 2 p.m. at uschesschamps.com. Today's show was produced by the world's greatest B team. Our technical advisor is Tammy Hyde. Our graphics and sound man is Isaac Schranz. Danny Machuca is our technical director. And for Grandmaster Josh Friedel, I'm Ben Simon. We'll see you tomorrow, and until then, so long from the Show Me State.